Hello, welcome to the Coach U Show. We're going to be talking about, is SEO dead? That's a good question.
Hey, hey. Greetings from Salt Lake City. You
All
know how
right.
to you know how to piss off people that do SEO?
How?
Tell them that SEO is dead. Or SEO is a scam.
Or is it SEO is dead? Long live SEO? How's that?
Yeah. I'm glad you guys are here for another episode of the Coach U Show. A lot of you guys, I want to hear your participation. I want to hear what your questions are. I want you guys to come up and argue. And I take the view of the search engine because I built the analytics of the search engine. My buddy Darwin Metzger is here. What a pro. And Corey is here. He's a YouTube expert, among other things. But I built the internal analytics at Yahoo 20 some years ago, and I've seen so many people come in and try to tell me their secret about SEO. And I'll tell them, my job is to bust people like you with the search engine, is to find all the tricks that you have. And we have teams of engineers that will spot your triangular linking or private link networks or minus 100, hiding things or cloaking or all the different sorts of things. So I want you guys in just a minute to raise your hand and come up and share whatever question you have or a thought you have, or maybe you want to challenge any of our. I see that there's some experts here with SEO. So, Jeff, did you start everyone off yet? Or can you guys hear me all right? Can you hear me, Jeffrey? I think you're on mute. Hey, let's do this. Just to test whether this is not to ask questions or to participate, but just to get a sense of where you guys are. Can you hit the hand raise button if you think SEO is a scam? Go ahead and hit that button. I want to see what you guys think. I'm not going to call on you. I just want to see what you guys think. Let's see how many people think that, because I think we'll find that we're going to redefine SEO in a way that a lot of folks haven't really thought of before. But what happens in our show here is that I'll start off with a little opening statement, and then I want you
Sorry.
guys.
Um,
I would like to get some sparks here. I want to get some people challenging us. So I'm going to do our little opening statement, and think about what statement you want to make, or if you want to argue a little bit. I welcome it all. You got to be polite, but I'd love people to be honest about where they are. All right. So it's about 10 years ago, and Michael Sanchez is here. Look at that. 10 years ago, we did the digital marketing for Quiznos, which is like the competitor to Subway. And there was one guy in there, and I won't give you his name because I've already embarrassed him to quite some degree. And he was charging Quiznos some ridiculous amount of money for SEO. And Bill, who's the COO, who's a good buddy of mine, he said, Dennis, this guy is charging us for all this SEO, and all he does is produce this report. Every month, and even then every week, he has a report, and it shows how many first page rankings we have, how many in the first 100 positions. Clearly, it came out of some tool that just put his name on it. His name is Jim. I won't tell you his last name. And I think that he's not really doing anything, because every time I ask him what's up, he says, oh, well, it's proprietary, and Google changes their rules all the time and whatnot. And I said, okay, well, show me what the value is of what you're doing. Show me that we're getting more local search results to people searching in the local 3-pack, right, for Quiznos, or show me we're driving more sales. Show me we're getting more employees. Show me we're driving more traffic because of our SEO. Because our view of SEO is that, first you have to rank on the keyword, then the keyword has to drive traffic, and the traffic has to then turn into some kind of conversion. And certainly SEO can drive to email or be blended together with social and other sorts of channels like TV and the billboards we had and all this kind of stuff. And he couldn't do it. All he said was it was all this big secret, and he wouldn't, of course, want to divulge what his secrets were in SEO. And I said, go ahead and try me. I worked at a search engine. Did you? I've heard this. I've heard this scam thousands of times. So long story short, this guy got kicked out of Quiznos. He ran the Denver SEO group too. So he had a community of hundreds of people that followed him for SEO, and he had a community of all these people to do SEO. One time I was speaking at a conference which was by this company that used to be called SEO Moz, and I think they're called Moz now. Rand Fishkin's a buddy of mine. Jillian was the co-founder, who's Rand's mom. And they acquired another company that was well known in the space that did SEO. They were well known in terms of like speaking about SEO. They had the best PowerPoints. They kept up to date on all the different Google updates. And they got a client that came to us because we had to come in and run Google ads. And this client, I got to look at the analytics, and I said, well, you guys aren't getting any organic traffic. What the heck's going on? The only traffic we're getting is the leads we have off of our Google ads. And I'm not saying like, PPC is better than SEO. Obviously there's, it's like renting versus buying. And we audited this company, which was part of SEO Moz, a well-respected company. You can probably figure out who it is if you do enough looking. And it turns out all they did was tell the client, hey, you need to produce content, basically coach them, use their same presentations they gave, and try to tell the client about that, which works if you're doing it for a huge enterprise company where they have SEO departments and you can get away with, basically having long meetings, just discussing stuff instead of driving sales for this small business. Last week, I was on a call. I'm on the advisory board for SEMrush. SEMrush is one of the top tools for SEO and PPC. And we had the head of SEO for Spotify, the head of SEO for like 3 or 4 of these other big companies. We were talking about what we wanted to do for improvements in this SEMrush tool. And you could use Ahrefs or Majestic or whatever your favorite tools are, uh, Google Search Console, which is the original one by Google. And we agreed that SEO was about content production. I mean, of course, certainly there's analytics and running reports and all that kind of stuff that the tools do. But unless you reach out and you are able to build links, unless you create content that then becomes link worthy, I would argue that SEO is a scam, because SEO is not what you do. Like, what you do is content. What you do is make videos. What you do is run ads. What you do is reach out and build relationships. What you do is take care of customers and collect feedback and build websites. Those are things that you do. And the result of SEO, PR, SEO, digital, the result of all of these things is that you rank better in search engines. So I would argue any of you guys that are really good at PPC or whatever, you are good at social media, good at taking care of your customers. You're driving SEO because it's driving more reviews, more people are talking about you, you get more referrals, you can boost those posts so more people see it, which drives more referrals, or you improve your landing pages, or you get quoted in the media because you did something important, or you have feedback on something. And I would argue that the result of that is you get more search engine traffic. But SEO is not what you do. SEO is the result. And people who think that SEO is something that you do, even though there's all these tools and there's technical SEO and making the site load faster and Google AMP and canonical stuff, I would, there's all that kind of stuff on categorizing data. I would argue that SEO is a scam for 99% of people doing it. They don't think they're scammers, but they are, because they're using these tools. They're following these other people who are well known. They're all friends of mine. People who are well known in the world of SEO, like, it could be like Bill Hunt or Bruce Clay or these other folks who invented the term search engine optimization. They're buddies of mine. That most people, they don't actually do it. There is no SEO for them. It's just something. It's paying for consulting, and maybe they do content marketing. Maybe they build links. Maybe they get placements, which is PR, right? But I would argue that most people that think they're doing SEO are not doing SEO. So I'll leave it at that. I'd love to hear, what do you guys think? Hit the hand raise button in the bottom, and let's talk about this.
So Dennis, while people are raising their hands, I'll ask a question. But obviously there is levels to this, right? Because there's some basic things that are just best practices for having a website, having the metadata correct, certain organizational things that you should do properly to give your website the best chance of being indexed and of being found. And then on top of that, what's really going to move the needle is really what you're talking about. It's having that content that's going to create the links back to the site, that's going to drive real organic traffic based on content, based on relevance, et cetera, right? So there's several levels here, aren't there?
Sure, there are. In the basic level, assuming your website's WordPress, which is 25% of the internet, the plugins already handle that. The way that stuff is linked together, and sitemaps and integration with Search Console and Manager, passing data back and forth, those are all part of being a good webmaster. Because before there were the big SEO conferences, there was Webmaster World. I think some of the people here in this audience remember Webmaster World, which was built by Brett Tapke. We just had our 20th anniversary, and I was there in Vegas just a few months ago. All the original Webmaster people, right? I'm one of the old timers, believe it or not. I'm 47, right? I was there back in my day. But it's about building websites. So if you're not technical enough to build websites, and this is something that happened 20 years ago, we were all building websites. And people who didn't know how to write HTML, and even the Rand Fishkins of the world, and Will and all these other folks will agree that if you don't know how to mess with basic HTML or don't understand the structure of how websites work, and I don't mean installing plugins on WordPress, I mean actually understand the fundamentals of the web, you can't do SEO. So you're right. At the basic level, Jeffrey, you have to be able to construct a website that loads fast and can be seen by the search engines and is categorized properly and all this. But I don't really, I mean, you can call that SEO, but I think it's really part of building a website that works properly, that Google, via their Lighthouse tools, or developer page speed insights and the different tools they have, says, hey, this is good. It's got good content, which is, I think, most important part of all these people that claim SEO. You have to have subject matter expertise in that area. I have a friend, met with him yesterday, and he owns an emergency preparedness company. So he's got all these like vegetables and fruits and things that are all freeze dried that last 25 years in these cans. And this guy knows all about the emergency preparedness. Like if a bomb happens, we lose water. Like he knows all about that. Could I help him with SEO? Not really, because I don't have enough expertise. I didn't know, for example, that Mylar bags decompose after 5 to 7 years, and that's why you have to have these other sorts of cans. I didn't know that emergency prep versus doomsday preppers are completely different people, and the key audience is 50 plus males, and they're not even necessarily LDS, but they just want to prepare, and in case there's a problem, in the basement they have a year and a half of a food supply. I didn't know things like that. So if I want to get him more traffic from search engines, I have to be able to create content that other people that are in the emergency prep space actually say that's credible content. So that's really how you would drive search engine optimization traffic. So beyond the basic build a website stuff, it requires expertise in that area. So even if you claim to be a pro at SEO, there could be all these different areas of subject, basketball, or how do you buy a first class ticket for cheap, or like whatever the topic is, you have to be an expert in that topic. I challenge anybody on whether challenge me on whether that's not true.
Yeah, so you're saying the basic plumbing or infrastructure of a website, anyone who knows how that should be done can do that part of the so-called SEO piece, but to really optimize for a particular website, you have to have domain expertise in whatever vertical or content subject matter that website is focused on, or else you can only do the plumbing. You really can't do the big stuff.
That's
Is
right.
that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
digital plumbing is about building websites. It's not an SEO thing. Calling it SEO is a way to charge way more money for it. I'll give you an example. So when Facebook ads first came out in May of 2007, I was one of the first people on the platform. I was in the right place at the right time, and I made a lot of Facebook ads. And I was just literally, I didn't sleep for days. I'd sleep a couple hours. I was just so excited about making Facebook ads and all the cool things that you could do with the targeting, which has been ripped away from us. And I got quoted in the media. And I built some campaigns. So our buddy Darwin Metzger, who's right below me, knows that we did some really killer campaigns and we spoke about them. And I was just really, really into all the geeky things on Facebook ads. And if you did a search on Google for Facebook advertising, the number 2 result was me. And the number 1 result was facebook.com/ads. So clearly I'm not going to displace Facebook on ranking on Facebook ads, Facebook advertising, how to set up Facebook ads. But I was ranking number 2 on a very competitive search term. Let me ask you, Jeffrey, and everyone else here, do you think I did any SEO to rank number 2 on the keyword Facebook advertising?
No, you just did all the content.
Well, then but do you think I would do better if I hired somebody to do SEO for me to get me more leads and more exposure and more clients for my agency?
No, not at that point. You had already established yourself as a subject matter expert, and that was driving your SEO.
Yeah, and it was having expertise because I produced content that other people thought, wow, this is really good. I'm willing to share it. In fact, I'm willing to link to it from my blog. And the media will link to it, and the media will interview me, and other people will see me on the LA Times, as Darwin remembers, right? And we spoke at not Ad World Expo. What was that big one in Blog World, right? I spoke at that one in LA, and I met Darwin, and I was at the Utah DMC where Corey here, he's on the like right underneath your face, Jeffrey, spoke there, and more people linked to me because I produced good content. I actually knew what I was doing, at least I thought, and I built some good relationships. And I hung out with these people, made friends with them, and I had dinner last night with AJ Wilcox, right? He's a LinkedIn ads guy, and we did a webinar together, which of course he links to me and I link to him. And so the net result of building relationships and creating content that's actually helpful causes these people to link to me. Of course, I link to them too. So I would argue, okay, if you agree that the biggest power in SEO is generating links, then how are you going to generate links if you don't have good relationships and you don't create expert level content? Can you just hire someone from some random country to write, or even using, Jasper, which is the name of Jarvis, to generate this stuff? You can't fake the relationships, right? I challenge anyone here. They'll say, oh, but there's a lot of technical SEO and stuff related to the website. Yeah, that's true. But 80, 90% of the power comes from generating links, and that requires somebody believes in you, they know you, they see your expertise, and they're willing to link to you from the New York Times, from their association website, from like wherever it is. And other people will counter and say, yeah, well, I've been able to do it without knowing anybody because I just buy a bunch of links. And here's some really cool link farms. And here's some places that generate a bunch of fake content that we just link between and put into a link laundering layer. And from the link laundering layer, we push up to these other sites. And look, I know a bunch of folks in porn, and who wants to link to a porn site? So then they create these other sites that people link to. And those sites in the link laundering layer point to the porn site. I get it. But if you want to do stuff for real, Google can tell when it's a crappy link. Just like SEMrush has this toxic links report. They tell you which links are garbage. In fact, those links will hurt you. A friend of mine who's the Arizona's Vision. He's an eye doctor in Phoenix, and his friend thought he was helping him by doing all this SEO, and he bought a bunch of garbage links, and we just spend all this time cleaning up his stuff and then submitting things like a disavow request to Google saying, yep, we're sorry, these aren't links that are really ours. Or we hired this SEO guy, and he bought a bunch of garbage links. It's called Google bowling when you want to screw over your competitor by buying them a bunch of garbage links. So you might think you're helping, but actually you're just damaging yourself. What do you think about that?
So Dennis, if we cut through everything you're saying, really, you're not saying SEO is not dead. SEO exists. What I think you're really trying to say is what's dead or what should be dead are people claiming to be SEO gurus, claiming they have this secret sauce, like you referred to earlier, taking advantage of the lack of knowledge that a small business owner may have about how to achieve everything you're talking about just by doing good content and good relationships. And instead of hiding their secret sauce, they should be teaching the fishermen how to fish. They should be teaching the domain expert who owns the website or business how they could leverage good content and good relationships to improve their SEO. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that. So imagine everyone here in the audience, Jeffrey, anyone listening or reading, let's say you had some kind of pain, or maybe you got in a car accident, you got injured, and you go to the hospital, and you're dying and you're bleeding, and this doctor or nurse comes up and says, "Hey, Jeffrey, I can do the surgery to fix your arm or whatever, but it's the secret, right? I can't tell you anything about it, how we do the surgery, but what do you think? We go ahead and do this, and you got to pay me, an extra $100,000 to do this secret surgery that's not taught in med school. What do you think?"
I'm going to save my money and find a different doctor.
That's right. So let's say you have someone else who's an expert. He's the pilot, right? Flies for American Airlines. I'm about to board a flight in an hour and a half to go to Phoenix. Do you think that pilot learned all the secrets? Do you think he had the secrets of flying a 737 Series 800? No. And the same thing for these SEO people. They're just witchcraft, Ouija board, witch doctor, whatever the word is you have for people that sell, these shamans that sell garbage. And yes, there is some technical skill. We've taught a ton of courses. We have one of our most popular courses, an SEO 101 course. We talk about how to actually do SEO and what is SEO for small businesses, real estate agents and mortgage brokers and attorneys. Like, how do you rank on these keywords? Well, here's how you do competitive analysis. Here's how you create the content. Here's how you build relationships, right? Here's how you use social to try to generate content and drive links that then influence the search engines. That's what it's about. It is completely visible. And in the latest tools that have come out in the last few years, that are basically building their own search engines, because the SEO tools to be effective have to build their own index. They have to build a search engine. Okay, just think about it. They have to reverse engineer the rankings and pull all the data. It is all transparent. So this guy I told you, Jim, who did the SEO for Quiznos before he got kicked out, courtesy of me. And he got so mad at me for kicking him out. But I said, dude, you weren't even doing anything. I did I ran an analysis and I found that you didn't build any links in the last 3 months. So you say you do SEO. All you did was hit the generate report button on the first of the month, send him this gigantic thing and print it out 100 pages and then bill him a few $1,000. What a dude, man, you can't be doing that. Where are you, like, oh, well, the Google does a dance and the search engines constantly change. And, it's a secret. We can't tell you what we did. You didn't do anything. And that's what I see with most people that claim to do SEO, especially when they outsource to other people that claim to do SEO. Another friend of mine runs an agency. Bless his heart. He's a good guy. He's very well known. And he outsourced the SEO, but he doesn't know exactly what happened. So he's a fat man getting a shoe shine. And that agency that does the SEO, all they do is buy links and generate content via link farms. And you know what? It actually does work temporarily. But if if you can't see what's actually happening, you have to wonder, like, is it really a secret, or they don't admit that they're not really doing anything, and they're charging you $1,000 a month for who knows what's going on.
Yeah. So I think that one thing that's been consistent, while algorithms change over time, the one thing that really hasn't changed from the very beginning is that relevant, original content gets rewarded when it comes to search, right?
It's always going to be that way, and it's the same thing with social media. Here's something that you can think about. So back when it was just websites 25 plus years ago, the only way to determine a signal of whether someone deserved to rank on a particular search term was voting. And the voting was other websites that linked to you. And that seemed like a reasonable thing until people could just buy a bunch of links from these other link farms and auto generate all of these internal pages on a website that linked to each other. So it looked like there were more backlinks. I mean, we had a rule where if a website had 100 unique linking domains, then it probably was like a reasonably legit site. Why? Because that's something that's harder for a spammer to do. A spammer is just going to buy a bunch of fake links from these other places. And so at Yahoo, we had these different things that we looked at to see whether they had some element. It was basically, what's the hardest thing for a spammer to do? Well, get a link from a .gov or .mil website, right? Military or government site, or get a real link from the New York Times or something like that. Because, like, why would a trusted site want to link to that? So we used these things that we thought were very hard to fake as the best signals of whether those things deserved ranking or had any kind of trust. And back then, Google had this thing called the toolbar page rank. They would tell you on a scale of 1 to 10 whether they thought you had some basic level of trust. And it's true, the toolbar page rank wasn't the same as the actual page rank. It was calculated differently, but it was a good approximation. And my site, my blog, dennis-u.com, had a page rank of 7. So for those of you who are pros in the space, that's hard to get. I mean, that's not as high as, CNN or Wall Street Journal and these guys that are 8, 9, and 10, but it's pretty high. So a link coming from a trusted site that has a ton of page rank, a ton of authority because other high powered domains are linking, is like whoever they vote for. It's just like a good friend that makes us that friend. So with websites linking each other, it's friends that are endorsing one another. Now, we don't have just websites. We have all these apps, and we have social media, but there's still the same voting mechanism that is based on people voting for one another. So who has more votes? Well, if the account is bigger, if the account is followed by people who are well trusted, so you can simulate the idea of edge rank as page rank, which are sites or properties that link to one another, and you figure out where all the nodes are and where the power is concentrating. So I would argue the same fundamental mathematical technique of calculating who deserves to rank in search engines is the same thing as determining who's popular or trustworthy or authoritative and social. And because those two are the same, it converges into building your overall reputation or your personal brand and whatnot. That's why I believe SEO and PPC and social media and PR are all the same thing. It's just different people. Instead of links being the vote, it's people clicking like or people watching like TikToks, watching through the end. Those are all still votes. But in the world of when there was just websites, that's all we had. So now we have more data, and I think increasingly it should be harder to fake out these systems. But that's proven wrong because fake news You can spread all sorts of fake stuff with deep fakes, and the people will buy the latest conspiracy theory or whatever it is because it's pushed to the top because more people are voting for it.
Yeah, it's complicated, but it's really everything you're saying goes back to relationships, and a lot of it's the same even with human relationships. You've talked before here, Dennis, on the Coach U show about the people you surround yourself with and the relationships you might have. And obviously, if you see someone and they're associating with someone that you think highly of, you naturally think more highly of the person you see with that person. So it's the same thing with these trusted links with high authority coming in from these trusted sources. It's really the basics of any type of relationship building, isn't it?
It's funny, Jeffrey, you're right on. And everyone should follow Jeffrey, who's the CMO of paw.com. So I'm a search engine engineer. And if anyone here also worked at a search engine, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are too. You'll probably corroborate what I'm saying. So people think of me, for example, as this geek, right? This Asian guy, good at math, did all this data analytics, huge data file munging database work. And here I am saying, this is the search engine engineer is telling you it's all about building relationships. And the people who are non-technical are saying, oh, it's all about all these technical tools and wizardry. And this other guy who's got some secret magician wizard stuff going on. It's so funny because if anybody should be giving technical advice, it should be the technical person. Yet I'm saying it's about building relationships, which then create the signal that leaves a paper trail of who's trustworthy and who has good content. For example, you write a blog post, could be generated by Jasper or some AI, or maybe someone well known wrote it, an actual good piece of content, actually helpful, and because Google Analytics is installed on most websites or whatnot, the engines, Google can see, like, did people enjoy that content? Did they stay and read? Did they go further in the site? Did they click back and go to the search results because it sucked? In other words, did they bounce right away? So the search engine can see that, and so that's ultimately what they're looking for, and that's what prioritizes your movement and search results. Is once you get into the top 10 or 20, based on rank brain, you could Google it and see what all that stuff is. It's based on the behavior. So if people really like your content, it's not because you're fooling the algorithm. The algorithm is relying upon what the users are doing. Then it's ultimately about relationships and knowledge. And guess what? The same thing is true on social media. It's about engagement. And different things have different weighting. Like on Facebook, a like's worth 1 point, comments worth 6, and a share's worth 13 points. And hiding the page and reporting spam and that kind of thing is worth minus 100, right? Approximately. I talked to Facebook engineers, they verified it, right? Why wouldn't it be the same thing and everything else where there's different weightings that add and subtract trust based on a relative point scale system? Like the whole thing with PageRank, an authority score or authority rank or whatever the measure any of the tools use to simulate what the amount of juice that's accumulating to a site is all based on adding and subtracting these positive and negative signals.
Yeah, that's great. So this is the Coach U show on Startup Club. And if you're listening and you want to ask a question to Dennis, or if you have a comment you want to share or an opinion about this topic, feel free to raise your hand. We'd love to have you up here on stage with us. And we are recording this show and we have replays turned on so you can listen to this show or share the replay. And over at startup.club, the website for Startup Club, you can find recordings of past episodes of the Coach U show and sign up for our mailing list to find out about other things going on here at Startup Club. So if you've got a question or a comment, or if you agree or disagree with anything we've been saying, raise your hand and come on up, and we'd love to hear from you.
Amen. And I'd love to hear from you guys, especially if you disagree on any of these points. A lot of these that do SEO, they say they do SEO for a living. They call themselves an SEO, just like some of you might call yourself an MBA. You're not an MBA, you got an MBA, right? You are not an SEO. The result of what you do is you get more search engine traffic. One of the things that is a huge pet peeve of mine is people that produce these reports that all the tools generate that will say, hey, look, you have 1,200 keywords that are in the first 100 results, which 10 pages of Google. And now we went from 1,200 to 1,300. So we're improving our SEO. Are we? Well, you could be ranking on a whole bunch of garbage keywords that aren't really worth anything. And if it's in the first 100 results, that doesn't mean anything because you know how to hide a dead body, right? Second page of Google. if it's not on the if it's not on the first page, and if it's not on a term that is meaningful to you, that's worth something, then who cares? You're probably just hurting yourself. I'll give you two examples. So when I ranked on Facebook advertising, I thought that was a pretty good thing. I mean, wow, I that's a competitive term, right? Imagine ranking number 2 on Facebook advertising and number 1 is Facebook themselves. And it generates lots of phone calls, lots of small businesses. Hey, I got a startup and I want some help with Facebook advertising. And so I got flooded. I got thousands of these people trying to call me and email me. And most of them were just people that didn't have any money and weren't, I mean, I want to help everybody. That's why I write these articles, but all of them wanted me to get on the phone, give them a free consultation to see whether I might be a fit or whether we could help them. And it hurt us, right? So it's just because you rank on a keyword and it drives a lot of traffic doesn't even necessarily mean it's any good. It has to be a keyword that has enough intent that it actually results in something meaningful for your business. So go further than just ranking reports, which are what the tools generate. Trace rankings into actual traffic, like people clicking on your website or watching your videos or whatever the next step is. And then from there into, does that turn into a sale of a product or service? So my view of SEO is I start from the business result, which is driving sales, right? Making the cash register ring, or someone checks out in Shopify. Someone has to buy something. They buy one of our courses, like Facebook for $1 a day. And I trace that back to the source of the traffic using the source medium report inside Google Analytics. And then I trace that back to rankings. But this whole idea of starting with this general set of keywords, then to rankings or how many rankings I have. I don't care about how many rankings I have. I care about how much revenue I have, and even more important, how much margin I'm generating on that. Hey,
Yeah,
Aaron,
it's
welcome.
not.
Hey, hey. Yeah, I think one of the things that I think that's like super, super important to optimize is like how many actual human to human conversations you can generate. Like for instance, a lot of people will be trying to like generate a lot of like SEO traffic. They'll get people to the page, but there won't necessarily be like a clear call to action. And even if you're trying to sell something like a SaaS product or some type of service, like a lot of it, I think like requires getting on like a webinar with a human being and really, really like trying to like pitch them your product, get them to like understand the value that your product adds in order to like make sales. Like I've been finding that it's almost impossible to make sales without like human conversation. I guess it really, really depends on the product. So I think that's like an interesting strategy of how you can like convert web visitors to ones that you can have like a Zoom conference with.
Amen, Aaron. I love it. I think you're right on. The idea that you need to have a good product or service because that's what generates feedback and conversion. And you have to be able to create a good user experience. So once you get the click, you got to convince them to buy, which means having a good product, testimonials, good user stories, whatever it is. So no amount of SEO magic is going to overcome having a crappy product and not having a great landing page or user experience, right?
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of startups will be spending a lot of time trying to do like Facebook ads, trying to do like Google AdWords, but really their time is best spent just like hunting down their customer and trying to get them on the phone or trying to get them on a conference call.
Amen. 100%. Appreciate you, bro. Great feedback. Hey, anyone else, hit the hand raise button. Got a comment, question? You want to argue? I love the people who want to argue. So come on up. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, while we're waiting for people to come up, Dennis, I think Aaron also raised a good point too. It's not quantity, it's quality, right? It's, and you pointed it out earlier when you talked about, ranking high for the wrong keywords or the wrong terms, you're attracting the wrong customers, right? And how many examples are there? Thousands of websites and businesses that have a lot of traffic that they cannot monetize because it's not useful traffic. It's not the right traffic. It's not the right customer. That's why for e-commerce businesses, that conversion rate is so important because, it's one thing to get 300, 400, 500,000 unique visitors a month to come to your site. But if none of them are buying anything, what's the point, right? It's not serving any purpose, and you're obviously not attracting the right people.
You guys want to
Right.
hear a
And
horror story that I, I don't know if
yeah,
I've
let's
ever
hear it.
shared, and I don't know if anyone has even heard this before. So we had WWE as a client for a few years. So they used to be called WWF. That's the wrestling, right? People call it fake wrestling, or they make fun of it, and Vince McMahon and all that. But I really enjoyed it. I loved going to Stanford and meeting with these guys. And Vince McMahon was, wow, he was a hoot. That guy, I mean, he created a whole industry. I could go on and on about how much I admire this guy. And before they were WWF, they were the World Wrestling Federation, and they lost a lawsuit with against the World Wildlife Fund, which is like saving pandas and that kind of thing. And the World Wildlife Fund had a choice because they won the lawsuit on either they can have their name, they can have the URL wwf.com, or they can get $1 million from Vince McMahon. And I'm sure you could probably Google parts of this to corroborate that this is true. And they chose instead to have the domain name. So they had WWF. So then Vince McMahon had to move to WWE. So I ran the PPC ads and the social media ads. I put a whole team to drive e-commerce sales and pay-per-views and WrestleMania. And I saw firsthand how much traffic we were getting. And I can't imagine that the World Wildlife Fund, who doesn't have the server infrastructure or the technical sophistication that we did to manage a top 50 website property on the planet, can you imagine how much traffic we had? And all the people that were then typing in WWF expecting wrestling instead are here's a campaign to save the pandas. They got pummeled with traffic because I saw how much traffic we had. So all this other traffic was going to the wrong site. And these guys, instead of taking the $1 million, they got hammered with millions of dollars of server cost because they didn't understand a basic SEO principle that the stronger brand was the wrestling company, and there was no way they could overcome that. So they should have taken the money, but instead they wanted the brand. So what do you think of that as an SEO mistake? Have you heard anything like that before?
I think it speaks to like a very, very like interesting like SEO hack that you can do. You know, if you can find like a competitor that's doing a lot of ad spend, you can figure out how you can like associate your brand with their brand and try and like piggyback off of their exposure. I think there's like some brilliant like strategies that could be potentially applied like intentionally like to what you're talking about there.
Amen. I'll give you another example. So one of my friends owns 10.com. So it's Michael, who's the CEO of a publicly traded porn company. It's New Frontier Media. And so 10.com, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he owned 10.com, TEN. Don't go there. It's the erotic network. So it's basically a porn site. And he came to me, he wanted some help with SEO. And I took a look at his analytics. And you would not believe how many people would go to 10.com just because they're typing in 10 this or 10 that. Because, people don't know the difference between typing in http:// blah, blah, blah.com. They just type in 10 and then they go to something which isn't really what they were looking for. One of my best friends, who's a really good guy, real smart, but not really a computer sort of guy, he was buying some tennis equipment for his kid, Neil, because he's like doing everything as a stay-at-home dad to take care of the kids, like give them the best of everything. And so he wanted to go to Dick's Sporting Goods to get more tennis equipment and tennis balls. So he went to Dicks.com. And what a surprise that was, right? So that's just an example of SEO going the wrong way. And since then, Google has corrected a lot of it. Or there's another friend of mine. He'll sometimes pop into these clubhouse rooms, and he owned cowboys.com, right? That's a great term, cowboys.com. And the Dallas Cowboys sent him a cease and desist saying, hey, you need to give back that name. It's trademarked. We're a football team. The lawyer sent all this stuff. And he said, no, I'm not going to, because he didn't use any of the trademarks. He didn't use pictures of the Dallas Cowboys. He instead just had pictures of like gay cowboys. I can't quit you, man. What is it, Bareback Mountain? One of those ones. And so, can you imagine all these like hardcore Dallas Cowboys football fans? They love Jerry Jones, and they go to cowboys.com and they see all these naked cowboys doing things. And I didn't do this. This is my friend, okay? After my friend changed that website, because after the lawyers like you tried to play hardcore, like, oh, we're going to take you to court, we're a big company, and you're just some little domain guy. After he changed that website to have all the gay cowboys and whatever, then the Dallas Cowboys paid him the money that he was looking for, and it's all because he did SEO the right way. So think about that.
Yeah, when it comes to SEO and domains, Dennis, we could do a whole show on that. And there's actually a lot of content around that topic over at domain.club and Domain Club here in Clubhouse. But that's why, if you're investing all this money in driving traffic to your site and you have a strong brand, it's recommended to also acquire the misspellings of your domains. Because, Aaron, the type of hack that you're talking about, what a lot of people will often do, if they know there's a very popular website that gets a lot of traffic, they'll buy a misspelling or a common misspelling of that website's name and then have that go to their site and take advantage of all the people who mistype or misspell things, and they basically hijack a lot of traffic from that popular site. So if you're building a strong brand, you want to think about different ways people might try to find your brand and make sure you control all those domains. But this is a whole nother discussion we can have another time. It's a pretty rich topic, and as for the past 10 years, I was the co-founder and CMO of .club Domains, which we just sold to GoDaddy. So I spent a lot of time addressing a lot of these domain issues.
Amen. Looks like we have, is it Amen? Welcome.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Jeffrey, for getting me up on stage. So I run a software company where we build apps, mobile apps, a lot of custom softwares for clients across the world. So I have a question regarding SEO in terms of backlinks. Do you think it's better to have, 50 or 100 backlinks which have high domain authority, maybe 90 plus, or is it better to have like 500 backlinks with domain on sites which have domain authority of about 50 plus?
I take the 90 plus all day long because the domain authority is on a log scale. So a 60 is not just a little bit better than a 50, it's an order of magnitude better. It's like 6 to 10 times more powerful. And a 70 versus a 50 is anywhere from 60 to 100 times more powerful. So are you in a realistic situation where you're getting a ton of DR90 plus links? How are you doing that? Those are only major media.
Some of them are sites like LinkedIn and the other profile sites. So there's a list of sites which you could do that on.
Oh, those are no
May not be
follow. Yeah,
90,
you need
but
to get actual links, not the no follow ones. Yeah. So just you have a LinkedIn profile. Like I have a Facebook profile. I have a Twitter profile with the blue check, and that's whatever TR98 or something. That doesn't count because it doesn't pass any juice. But what you have to have is an article about you or your software company with do follow links where the media is actually covering you, not just because you have a Twitter profile and Twitter's like a DR99 or whatever it might be, right? You follow what I mean?
yeah, but maybe sites like Reddit and slash.com, I don't think they are not they are do follow, I think.
If it was that easy, the game of SEO would be over by now. Yeah, anybody can post anything on Reddit. The sites that actually carry SEO power are the ones that are very hard to get. So if it was just that easy to post to Slashdot or Reddit, and all of a sudden you got a DR90 site linking to you, then why would anyone do anything else, right? I wish things were that easy. If it were, none of us would be here, right?
Got it. I just have one more question. Can I quickly ask that?
Go for it.
What do you think in terms of percentage, in terms of percentage, what do you think will get you up on the first page regarding technical SEO, backlinks, and maybe a few other things?
What do you want to rank for?
Say something like mobile apps development.
Mobile apps development. Oh man, do a search on that,
Develop.
and
Sorry. Maybe mobile app development companies.
don't do that. There's so many out there. Unless you're a major player, that is just ridiculous. Like the whole first page is DR80 plus, right? It's going to be better, just like what Jeffrey and I think Aaron talked about. Collect the feedback from the happy customers where you built mobile apps. Promote them, not in a testimonial like way, but share actually how do you build an app? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go behind the scenes, share your expertise. That's going to be way better than trying to rank for a generic term. Even better than, I mean, what you could go for is mobile app development for whatever, the industrial pipe fitting outfitters, right? Some kind of niche, industry, but not mobile apps overall. Because think about all the different industries that need an app. Like you need to have a, you know what I mean? You got to be real. You got to really niche it down. So any of us here, like maybe we do Facebook ads for real estate agents, right? Or for whoever it is, you're going to do so much better when you niche down, not just because it's less competition, but because you're going to build a community of other people that all have similar sorts of needs. Because the mobile app development for a SaaS company is different than for like a Best Buy if they want to change their point of sale or integrate NFTs or like what, they're all going to be so different. So I would ask you, Aman, what is your lighthouse client? The one client you're most proud of that you'd love to get 10 more of the same thing? What industry are they in? What are the things that you did for them? Blog about it, make videos about it, share it openly in a non-salesy kind of way, and get 10 more of that. And that's your best approach, not trying to rank on mobile app development. Good grief. Do a search. Here, I'll just do a search right now. I bet you there's 200 million search results for this or more, maybe even a billion. Mobile app development. All right, here it is. Mobile app development.
Sorry, mobile
Yeah.
app development companies.
Mobile app development companies. Yeah, same thing. A zillion search results. That is a bloodbath. If I wanted, if I hated somebody, not that I ever did, but if they were a mobile app development company and I wanted to have them go out of business, I would ask them to go try to SEO for that.
Yeah, I agree. Like to be able to like find new customers through SEO, like for a mobile app development company, I think would be very, very hard. I think your best approach would be like Dennis was saying, like try and like create like a tutorial or some type of thing where like, hey, we created this app using this framework or this technology, and post off at it like on LinkedIn or like other websites like that. I've also been finding like Upwork to be like a good place, like find a lot of us through that for mobile app development. I have like a software like app platform company to kind of use that to try and like find customers that are like looking for like qualified freelancers to do any type of development. But also maybe like another idea, like I haven't tried this myself, but if you went through like the app store, maybe like a specific genre of apps or whatnot, and kind of like reviewed what's out there, and you could say like, hey, this app could be like significantly improved if it had these various features, and then like reaching out to the company, um, saying that you've built these features before, you can add it to their app and something like that. I think maybe could be a good approach.
Yeah, you really like with anything in terms of a business, you want to know who your customer is. You don't want to be so generic. You can't serve the entire universe of people who might want an app developed. And you probably have, if you sit back and think about it, a niche or a type of app that you are more expert at than just anything. Maybe it's focusing on e-commerce. Maybe you're really good at doing apps that involve video content or whatever. And then you want to target your SEO to attract people who have that particular need. Just like, in any field, there are builders, developers who specialize in certain types of homes. They're going to look for the customer who wants that type of home. They're not just going to be a generic home builder for anyone. So it's the same kind of thinking I think applies to you.
I'll give you an example. So we ran the Google and Facebook ads and email and digital for the Golden State Warriors, the basketball team, for 5.5 years. And I wanted to get more pro sports teams, right? I mean, why not? We had where they were paying us. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. We're making money. So if I was approaching SEO, what would I want to rank on? Let's see. Digital marketing for pro sports teams, NBA teams, Facebook ads, like all these other sorts of keywords. But I didn't do that. Instead, I took the head of digital innovation for the Warriors, and I took their CMO, and I took all these other people that worked at the Warriors, and I put them on podcasts, and I put them on public speaking tours. One time I got invited to keynote at a conference where the previous year Richard Branson was the opening keynote. It was in this huge stadium. So they invited me to speak, and I went to the stadium, but all I did instead of doing the 45-minute opening keynote was I introduced the head of digital marketing from the Golden State Warriors. And I talked for 5 minutes and he talked for 45 minutes. And he had a fantastic experience. I mean, imagine that you're speaking in a stadium. It's a great thing. The newspapers and the media and all that are taking it up and sharing. And so instead of building fame for myself, I mean, that would have been a nice thing. This other guy did, but guess what happened? The NBA picked up on it, and Facebook picked up on it, and other newspaper and whatever outlets in the United States, these pro sports industry magazines picked up on it. And they saw what the Golden State Warriors were doing, because in the presentation, Daniel referenced what we were doing. He referenced me a few times. So if you do a search on Golden State Warriors, Dennis Yu, you'll see a lot of these media placements that we got. And it was because I highlighted the client instead of talking about us. So Aman, I want you to think about how you highlight the client. I'm sure Aaron does the same thing. Highlight the client. Get them, like, do PR for them, and that's going to build. And then the Chicago Bulls and the Phoenix Suns and these other teams reached out, and we started, the Houston Rockets. We started doing some campaigns for them, and it had nothing to do directly with us trying to do SEO for those terms. We were really using PR, and we got traffic because people saw it. There was word of mouth. We got published in a bunch of these industry magazines, right? That is the most guerrilla smart, I believe, technique to do SEO if you are an agency or a consultant or whatnot, is leveraging your clients to get into those high powered magazines, which when they link to you, that's a DR, like Sports Illustrated links to you, that's a DR 92 or whatever. It's fantastic. You see what I'm saying? So don't talk about yourself, because people don't want to link to you when you do that.
Yeah, I really like the idea that Dennis is presenting here. And I'm thinking another idea is you could like host an online virtual conference like with your company's name, and you can invite like other developers from other companies or whatnot to like come share their like software or app development experience, like creating apps in different frameworks, yada yada yada, just to generate more content that'll give you more exposure. That'll like add some like reputation to your like app development company as like holding this conference. And you could do a few different series on them. You could say like React Native Apps Development Conference via this, sponsored by this company. And a lot of people want to just like speak at these conferences just to get like exposure, like their resume, all kinds of other stuff. But I think that would be a good way, at least to attract an audience, maybe find some potential customers that way.
Thank you, guys. Great advice.
Excellent. Good job, Aaron. All right, Jeffrey, what do you think?
No, excuse me. I think it's a great topic. I think it would have been interesting if a few more people came up and challenged some of the things you said, but maybe next time. But that's okay. I think it's an important topic, but I think it's not, in the early days, as you referenced earlier, Dennis, when there was such thing as a webmaster who did everything, including SEO and the plumbing and everything else and the HTML and answered the support messages that came into the website, just did it all. Now everything's much more holistic, right? We're into so many different channels. Every customer you're trying to reach is bouncing around from their mobile phone to their tablet to their smart TV to talking to someone to social media. That to just talk about SEO by itself almost doesn't really make sense, because SEO is really just part of a holistic approach to marketing, which includes your content, it includes your advertising, it includes, all of the brand communications, all of these things together, the relationships we talked about. That's all going to contribute to optimizing your ability to be found by search engines, in my opinion.
That's a mic drop moment. I don't think anybody could have said it better. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. And I love being part of Startup Club, the Coach U show here, and people like Jeffrey that donate their time and other people to try to help other people in digital marketing. I want to give you one other example that I think is kind of funny, that only industry people, I think, would ever see. So back when we were doing ads and such for WWE, which is the wrestling company, we had, all these people. Could be like John Cena or The Rock or other sorts of, we call them wrestlers, but they wanted to be called talent. And a lot of them, they left to go do movies, and which is the thing that Vince McMahon got pissed about, right? Because he trained them up, get them media trained, and then they go do some other thing and forget about WWE. And we had one of them, and he was called The Undertaker. Do you guys remember The Undertaker? He had this, and all the wrestlers had to have their independent contractors. They had to have their own uniforms, their own outfits. So he was this like scary guy dressed as this dude who would, whatever, harvest your soul or something. And at the same time, we had another client, and they were a nationwide funeral home company, and they had caskets. They sold caskets. So we had two Google ad campaigns that were both going after the keyword undertaker. And one undertaker was Sunday, 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 like WWE, Raw presents, whatever it might be, right? The Undertaker versus so and so, right? Live, right? And can you imagine though, somebody who's typing in Undertaker because their mother just died, and then they see this WWE ad, right? Or from an organic search standpoint, they type in, the Undertaker because they want to know the stats and they want to buy a T-shirt with the Undertaker on it. Instead, they're like, we sell the best variety of caskets for your loved one. Can you imagine that? And so at the search engine, we had to figure out what the intent was. So we started working on this a long time ago. And a lot of the folks on my team at Yahoo went to go work at Google to try to take this further. But I think SEO as a technical skill has largely gone away because the engines have been so smart in figuring out what the real deal is, what the real intent is, going way beyond latent semantic indexing, taking into account social data, data from your phone, data that the NSA doesn't even know. I mean, whatever, all this other data. So I don't really think you can trick the engines. That's why I love people to come. Like we didn't really have. I usually will get one or two people that want to come up and challenge me, or maybe people know that if they challenge me, I'm going to bash them because it's just fun. I love to see these people flex and see how far they get. But the engines are so smart that really that's why it goes back to the relationship. So instead of fooling the engine, focus on really taking care of people. And you hear the Google folks even say, like, put content out there that actually deserves to rank. So that is the bottom line on SEO, is put stuff that really, do a search for the thing you want to rank on and look at those first 10 results, and you need to put up something that actually deserves to be better than the stuff that's out there. Otherwise, why would anyone go to your thing? Why would Google want to show you in there in the top 10? So I'll leave you guys with
Yeah.
that.
I think one thing that's like kind of incredible about all of this is now that you can create like a really, really large company that basically is just a connector of everything. I'm thinking about the idea of being like a funeral home, like a lead generator where you're just like a middle person to like other funeral homes. There's this like a retirement home finder or whatnot. I forget what it's called, but they do all these ads on the radio, and they make like 300-400 million dollars a year, basically just generating leads and phone calls and like website referrals for people looking to like put like their loved ones in a
Yep.
retirement home. I think it's kind of incredible the power like the internet has created just
Yep.
from like a few people can like generate a huge amount of capital.
Yep. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, everyone who joined us tonight for another great episode of the Coach U Show. We do this show every Thursday evening at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on Startup Club. And you can find recordings of the Coach U Show and many other shows over at startup.club, our website. And of course, the replays are here in Clubhouse. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. We hope you have a great rest of your evening and hope to see you again in another Coach U show in the future. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, everybody. Good night.